Imagine this 6 months from today, you wake up, look in the mirror, and barely recognize the person staring back at you. Not because you've changed a little, but because you've rebuilt yourself entirely, stronger, sharper, more disciplined, more alive. Now here's the truth most people never face. 6 months will pass whether you use them or waste them. The question is, who will you be when they do? If this video helped you, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons so you never miss the next one. Also, drop a comment and let me know which country you're watching from. I'd love to hear from you. Let's come back to the point. So friends, radical personal responsibility is the foundation of any meaningful transformation. It is the moment when a person stops searching for external reasons to explain their failures and instead turns inward to confront the undeniable truth. Life, in its present form, is the result of choices that have been made. Every decision, whether deliberate or careless, every habit maintained, and every opportunity ignored, collectively build the condition you currently live in. Accepting this is difficult because it demands stripping away the comfort of excuses. It requires abandoning the illusion that circumstances, luck, or the actions of others bear the primary weight of your situation. The human tendency is to point outward, toward parents who didn't provide enough, bosses who failed to recognize talent, or society that seems tilted against us. And while these factors can shape certain challenges, they cannot define the trajectory of a determined individual. The acceptance of radical responsibility is an act of courage because it leaves you exposed, but it also places you in command. When someone chooses to adopt this mindset, the language they use begins to change. Instead of saying, I can't lose weight because I have a slow metabolism, they admit, I haven't consistently eaten the right foods or moved enough to create change. Instead of lamenting, my career isn't advancing because no one sees my potential, they state, I haven't acquired the skills or communicated my value in a way that demands recognition. This shift in language is more than semantics. It is the dividing line between helplessness and agency. Words define reality, and when you shift to a vocabulary of responsibility, you implicitly commit yourself to action. Responsibility also means understanding that your failures are not permanent indictments, but opportunities for correction. The person who avoids responsibility frames setbacks as evidence of an unfair world. The person who embraces it sees the same setback as information, a signal pointing toward what needs to be adjusted. If your finances are in disarray, responsibility demands that you trace every dollar, identify patterns, and accept where waste or neglect has occurred. If relationships in your life are failing, responsibility insists that you analyze your behavior, your communication, and the ways you may have contributed to the breakdown. This analysis does not imply self-loathing, rather it represents a sober acknowledgement that you possess the power to alter outcomes. A powerful dimension of radical responsibility is that it does not end with what you do. It extends into how you think. Thoughts shape behavior, and behavior shapes results. If the mind is filled with resentment, self-pity, and blame, then actions will mirror those qualities, reinforcing a cycle of defeat. Responsibility requires cleaning up the mental environment, catching the moments where you drift into unproductive thoughts, and pulling yourself back into alignment with constructive ones. This is not an overnight shift, but a practice, one that deepens every day you commit to it. Over time, you become someone who instinctively asks, what can I do differently? Instead of, why does this always happen to me? Taking radical responsibility is also deeply tied to freedom. At first glance, it might appear restrictive, as though you are burdened with blame for everything. But the truth is the opposite. When you fully own your circumstances, you stop being at the mercy of chance. You recognize that your life is not a script written by others, but a canvas you can deliberately paint. This awareness is not meant to crush you, it is meant to empower you. The weight of responsibility is heavy, yes, but it also sharpens your posture, focuses your vision, and arms you with resolve. Those who carry it properly walk differently. They stand taller because they know their life is in their hands. They stop waiting for the right season or the perfect opportunity and instead begin creating conditions that bring opportunity toward them. And once you take this step, every other principle of transformation, discipline, vision, growth, rests securely upon it because you have embraced the truth that you are the author of your own life. Defining a compelling vision is not about indulging in daydreams or fantasizing about a distant future where everything magically aligns in your favor. It is the deliberate act of constructing a vivid picture of the person you intend to become and the life you want to inhabit. Without such a vision, you are like a traveler wandering without a map, susceptible to distraction, stagnation, and the subtle erosion of your potential. People often underestimate the power of clarity, assuming that vague wishes like, I want to be successful, or I want to be happy, are enough to drive transformation. But generalities do not create focus, and focus is the single most critical force when attempting to change the trajectory of your life. To build a compelling vision, you must first dare to articulate what an extraordinary 6 months would look like in tangible, observable terms. That means asking, what skills will I possess? What kind of relationships will I cultivate? What will my body and mind feel like? What measurable accomplishments will stand as evidence that I am no longer who I was? A vision becomes compelling when it engages not just your rational mind, but your emotions. Facts and logic can outline a path, but they are not enough to sustain the discipline required to follow it. Emotion is fuel, and a vision must stir something deep within you. Imagine the person who wakes each morning not with dread, but with a sense of urgency because they can see, almost taste, the life they are building. That is the difference between a weak wish and a compelling vision. The latter is so concrete that when you close your eyes, you can visualize yourself in it, and it creates a sense of discomfort with your current condition. That discomfort is not destructive. It is the tension that pulls you forward. The gap between where you are and where you intend to be becomes unbearable to ignore, and in that space, motivation is born. Crafting such a vision requires honesty, and honesty often reveals fear. Many people resist setting precise goals because specificity leaves no place to hide. If you declare that in 6 months you will have mastered a new professional skill, built stronger habits of discipline, or achieved a measurable health milestone, then failure becomes visible. Ambiguity allows escape, but vision demands accountability. This is why many remain trapped in mediocrity. They are unwilling to state what they truly want because they fear discovering they cannot achieve it. Yet this confrontation with fear is precisely what makes a vision transformative. By naming your aim, you give structure to your efforts, and you force yourself into the kind of growth that only comes when failure is possible. The act of defining a vision also aligns priorities. Once the image of your future self is clear, it becomes easier to recognize which activities move you closer and which lead you astray. Time, wasting distractions, once tolerated, now reveal themselves as direct obstacles to the life you want. The vision acts as a filter through which decisions are made. If your future self is someone who has built financial stability, then impulsive spending cannot coexist with that identity. If your vision is to embody physical strength and vitality, then neglecting your health ceases to be an option. Every choice becomes measured against the standard of your vision, and in that way, clarity simplifies the often chaotic process of decision-making. Another powerful effect of defining a compelling vision is that it creates momentum through incremental progress. Once the vision is articulated, you can reverse engineer the steps required to achieve it. The enormous mountain of change is broken into daily actions, and every completed step provides evidence that the transformation is underway. These micro achievements feed your confidence, and that confidence in turn strengthens your ability to pursue larger goals. The process becomes self-reinforcing. Clarity creates focus. Focus generates progress, and progress deepens belief. Ultimately, defining a compelling vision is not merely an exercise in optimism. It is a confrontation with possibility and an invitation to responsibility. It requires you to stop drifting, to stop living passively under the weight of old habits and unclear desires, and instead to stand and declare the kind of life you will pursue with intention. The clarity of that declaration marks the beginning of transformation, because only when you know where you are going can you summon the strength and discipline to arrive. Daily discipline and structure form the invisible architecture of transformation. It is tempting to think that success is the result of bursts of inspiration or occasional heroic effort. But in reality, it is born from the repeated execution of small actions carried out with consistency. Discipline is not glamorous, and it rarely feels exciting in the moment. It demands repetition, restraint, and the willingness to delay gratification. Yet this is precisely why it is so powerful. The human mind and body are shaped by routine. What you do every single day becomes who you are, and what you avoid becomes equally defining. Transformation over 6 months is not about one extraordinary event. It is about the aggregation of hundreds of ordinary moments where you choose structure over chaos, focus over distraction, and effort over comfort. When people resist discipline, they often do so under the illusion that it restricts freedom. They believe that creating a structured schedule robs them of spontaneity, as if commitment to a plan is a form of imprisonment. In truth, the opposite is the case. A life without discipline is a life governed by impulses, urges, and external circumstances. You may feel free in the moment, but over time, the lack of structure leaves you enslaved to inconsistency, regret, and mediocrity. Discipline is the means through which true freedom is achieved. By enforcing structure on yourself, you create the conditions that allow for greater control, greater choices, and ultimately a more expansive life. The individual who rises at a consistent hour, dedicates time to health, studies, and meaningful work is the one who opens doors for future opportunities. The one who abandons structure and pursues only comfort finds those doors closed. The mechanics of daily discipline begin with recognizing the importance of time. Every day holds a finite number of hours, and without structure, those hours scatter into trivial tasks, distractions, and wasted energy. Structure is the conscious act of ordering your time in alignment with your vision. It means deciding in advance what matters most and ensuring that the first energy of the day is devoted to those priorities. For some, this may involve beginning the morning with exercise to establish physical vitality. For others, it might mean spending the first hour on deep work that advances a long-term goal before the noise of the world interrupts. The order will vary depending on individual aims, but the principle is universal. Discipline transforms days into building blocks of achievement. Another dimension of discipline lies in the mastery of small, seemingly insignificant habits. The person who trains themselves to make the bed, prepare meals with attention, or keep their workspace organized is not merely performing trivial chores. They are reinforcing an identity of order and control. Each small habit becomes proof that they can command themselves to act regardless of mood. Over weeks and months, this self-command grows stronger, and when larger challenges arise, the disciplined individual is equipped to respond. Conversely, neglect in the small things breeds a mindset of indulgence and avoidance, which inevitably spreads into larger areas of life. Discipline is also about resisting the constant pull of distraction. Modern life offers endless opportunities for avoidance: social media, entertainment, trivial conversations, and digital noise. Without structure, these distractions consume the very hours needed for growth. Discipline demands that you consciously create boundaries limiting digital consumption, setting specific windows for rest and leisure, and prioritizing tasks that move you closer to your goals. This is not to eliminate pleasure, but to place it within a larger framework where it does not undermine progress. Pleasure is most meaningful when earned through effort, and structure ensures that enjoyment does not devolve into escapism. The emotional challenge of discipline cannot be ignored. Many days you will not feel like following the plan. Fatigue, boredom, or doubt will tempt you to deviate. It is in these moments that discipline reveals its true nature. It is the act of doing what is necessary regardless of how you feel. Feelings are temporary and unreliable, but actions grounded in discipline accumulate into permanent results. 6 months of structured, disciplined living may feel monotonous at times, but when viewed in retrospect, it becomes a period of extraordinary transformation. What seemed repetitive and ordinary in the moment will stand as the foundation of a radically different life. Your body is the foundation upon which every other dimension of your life rests. And without health and energy, no amount of ambition or discipline can be sustained. The pursuit of transformation over 6 months requires a reservoir of strength, clarity, and resilience, and these are directly tied to the way you treat your physical and mental well-being. Too often, people attempt to build success while neglecting the vessel through which all effort must flow. They sacrifice sleep in the name of productivity, consume foods that dull their vitality, and allow sedentary habits to corrode their energy. The result is a life where progress is constantly sabotaged by fatigue, poor concentration, and declining motivation. To transform yourself, you must first acknowledge that health is not optional. It is the engine of every meaningful achievement. The starting point is sleep. Modern culture often glorifies late nights and early mornings as though exhaustion were a badge of honor. Yet nothing is more destructive to performance than chronic sleep deprivation. Rest is not merely the absence of activity, it is the active process by which the brain consolidates memory, regulates emotion, and repairs the body. Without sufficient sleep, discipline erodes, decision-making falters, and emotional volatility increases. A 6-month success plan must treat sleep as sacred, establishing consistent routines that prioritize 7 to 8 hours of uninterrupted rest. When you awaken restored, the quality of every other action you take is elevated and the cycle of growth accelerates. Nutrition is equally critical. Food is not simply a source of pleasure, it is the raw material from which energy, focus, and resilience are manufactured. A diet dominated by processed foods, excess sugar, and stimulants may provide fleeting bursts of energy, but inevitably leaves you sluggish and unfocused. In contrast, meals rich in whole foods, vegetables, lean proteins, healthy fats, and complex carbohydrates stabilize blood sugar, fuel sustained energy, and support mental clarity. Over 6 months, these choices accumulate into profound differences in performance. Energy that once dipped and spiked erratically becomes steady and reliable, creating a stable foundation upon which habits of discipline can flourish. The body properly nourished becomes an ally rather than an obstacle. Movement is another cornerstone. A sedentary life invites stagnation, not only in the body but in the mind. Exercise is more than a tool for aesthetic improvement. It is a daily recalibration of strength, endurance, and confidence. Even modest but consistent activity, walking, lifting weights, practicing yoga, or engaging in sports, unlocks a cascade of benefits. Endorphins lift mood, circulation improves focus, and resilience to stress increases. 6 months of deliberate physical activity reshapes not only the body but the character, instilling perseverance and self-respect. It is not about becoming an athlete. It is about building the physical capacity to sustain the demands of a higher life. Equally important is the connection between body and mind. Stress, left unmanaged, corrodes both. The body registers emotional strain in very real terms: tense muscles, disrupted sleep, inflammation, and suppressed immunity. A comprehensive plan for transformation must therefore include practices that regulate stress. Meditation, breath work, journaling, or even simple periods of silence act as tools to reset the nervous system. This creates space between stimulus and response, allowing for more thoughtful decisions and calmer focus. Over time, this internal regulation becomes a competitive advantage, enabling you to remain steady in situations where others collapse under pressure. Energy is not infinite, and it must be managed intelligently. Overcommitting, neglecting rest, or refusing to set boundaries leads inevitably to burnout. Success requires not only hard work, but also the wisdom to recover and recharge. Breaks, leisure, and connection with others are not distractions from growth. They are essential components of it. When balanced correctly, they replenish the very energy required to maintain momentum. By treating the body and mind as a system to be nurtured rather than exploited, you ensure that progress made in one area of life is not undermined by decline in another. 6 months of honoring health and energy will alter the very texture of your existence. Tasks that once felt overwhelming become manageable. Goals that seem distant draw closer because you have the stamina to pursue them consistently. Your body becomes a partner in your growth, a source of power rather than limitation. And from that foundation, every other element of transformation gains. Strength, skill development, and value creation lie at the heart of meaningful transformation because they directly determine the extent to which you can contribute, compete, and expand opportunities in the modern world. No matter how much discipline or vision you cultivate, if you do not become someone who can deliver real value, your growth remains limited. The economy, society, and every human relationship are structured around exchanges of value, and the ability to increase your worth to others is the surest path to advancement. Over 6 months, it is entirely possible to acquire a skill that elevates your position, whether in your career, business, or personal life. The key is to approach learning with intensity, consistency, and an understanding that the more you master, the more leverage you create for yourself in every domain. The first step in this process is clarity about what skill to pursue. Not all skills are equal in impact. Some provide marginal improvements, while others radically alter your capacity to create value. Choosing the right one requires asking hard questions about your current position and your desired future. If your career is stagnating, what competency would make you indispensable in your industry? If you want to build independence, what entrepreneurial or technical skill would allow you to generate income without dependence on others? The choice must be strategic, focusing on areas where your effort will yield the highest return. Once identified, the skill becomes the centerpiece of your 6-month plan, demanding daily practice and deliberate focus. Learning in adulthood requires a shift from passive consumption to active engagement. Too many people mistake watching tutorials, reading books, or attending lectures as the essence of learning. In truth, knowledge only becomes skill through application. Real growth requires repeated practice, feedback, and refinement. If you decide to learn coding, you must hours writing and testing programs rather than merely reading theory. If your aim is public speaking, you must stand in front of audiences, deliver talks, and accept the discomfort of critique. The discomfort of practice is where transformation occurs because it forces you to confront mistakes, adapt, and improve. 6 months of consistent, focused application is enough to turn a novice into someone competent and valuable. Skill development is not only about the mechanics of learning, it is also about building the character that sustains growth. Persistence, resilience, and humility are essential. Every new skill comes with a steep learning curve, and many abandon the pursuit when frustration sets in. By accepting that failure and error are inevitable parts of the process, you transform frustration into fuel. Each mistake becomes data, each obstacle an opportunity to sharpen your method. This mindset ensures that the skill not only grows, but also integrates into your identity, making you someone who thrives under challenge rather than shrinks from it. As your competence expands, so too does your capacity for value creation. The world does not reward knowledge that lies dormant. It rewards the ability to apply that knowledge to solve problems, create efficiencies, or inspire others. The skill you acquire must therefore be directed outward. Ask where it can alleviate pain, save time, or provide enjoyment for others. A writer who owns their craft must share ideas that resonate and guide. A designer who sharpens technical ability must create solutions that improve lives. In this outward focus, your skill transcends personal growth and becomes a vehicle for impact. The compounding effect of skill development over 6 months is profound. Not only do you acquire the technical ability to perform at a higher level, but you also cultivate confidence rooted in competence. Confidence earned in this way is unshakable because it is built on proof rather than wishful thinking. Others begin to recognize your value, opportunities present themselves more frequently, and doors that once seemed closed begin to open. The connection between skill and freedom becomes undeniable. By dedicating yourself to mastery, you reduce dependence on external forces and increase your ability to shape your own path. 6 months may feel brief, but in that span, you can transform your position in the world by becoming someone capable of producing value others cannot ignore. Accountability and reflection are the mechanisms that keep transformation from drifting into failure. It is not enough to set a vision, build discipline, and develop skills if you cannot measure your progress and confront the truth about whether you are staying aligned with your plan. Human beings are prone to self-deception. We exaggerate our efforts, downplay our weaknesses, and rationalize our failures. Without a process to hold yourself accountable, even the most ambitious goals dissolve into wishful thinking. Accountability provides the external or internal structure that forces you to remain honest about what you are doing, and reflection allows you to adjust before small errors compound into larger derailments. 6 months is long enough to achieve radical change, but it is also long enough to completely lose your way if you lack a system of consistent review. Accountability begins with visibility. Goals must be translated into clear metrics that can be tracked and evaluated. Vague intentions like get healthier or be more productive do not lend themselves to accountability because there is no concrete way to measure progress. Specific actions, such as exercising 4 times per week, writing 1,000 words a day, or saving a fixed percentage of income, create conditions where accountability can function. These metrics transform aspiration into observable reality. Once defined, they can be recorded, monitored, and assessed. Every day or week becomes a test of whether you lived in accordance with your declared commitments. The act of tracking itself exerts psychological pressure to improve. Because the numbers do not lie, they strip away excuses and reveal whether effort matches intention. External accountability often strengthens this process. Left alone, people often rationalize failure by lowering standards or pretending that partial effort is enough. Sharing your goals with a mentor, a peer, or even a small group introduces a layer of social pressure. You become aware that someone else is observing your progress, and this awareness sharpens your commitment. The prospect of disappointing others or admitting neglect creates a powerful motivator to stay consistent. Many of the most effective transformation programs in business, fitness, or personal growth include this external layer, not because individuals cannot track themselves, but because human psychology responds strongly to the presence of an observer. Even a simple agreement to report weekly progress to a friend can make the difference between persistence and collapse. Reflection is the second half of this equation. Accountability without reflection can become rigid and unproductive because progress is rarely linear. Life presents obstacles, unforeseen challenges, and changing circumstances. Without pausing to evaluate, you risk continuing a flawed strategy or burning out under unrealistic expectations. Reflection is the practice of stepping back on a weekly basis to analyze what worked, what failed, and what can be improved. It is not self-pity or indulgence in regret, but an honest audit of performance. This process allows you to detect patterns, identify recurring mistakes, and make deliberate adjustments. Instead of repeating the same errors for 6 months, reflection ensures that every failure becomes a lesson that accelerates growth. The power of reflection also lies in its ability to reconnect you with your vision. In the grind of daily effort, it is easy to forget why you started. Fatigue and monotony can dull motivation. Reflection reawakens your sense of purpose by reminding you of the larger outcome you are moving toward. It also highlights progress already made, which fuels confidence and reinforces discipline. Even small gains, when noticed and celebrated, provide momentum to continue. Neglecting reflection leaves you blind to your own advancement, which can cause discouragement and eventual abandonment of the plan. Accountability and reflection together create a feedback loop of growth. You commit to action, measure performance, evaluate results, and adjust behavior. Over time, this cycle compounds into significant transformation because each week becomes sharper and more efficient than the last. 6 months lived with this level of self-awareness and honesty produces more progress than years lived without it. You are no longer drifting aimlessly or repeating mistakes. You are evolving deliberately, guided by evidence rather than illusion. This process demands humility because it requires admitting shortcomings, but it also cultivates strength because it proves you can confront the truth and still move forward. The individual who adopts accountability and reflection becomes self-correcting, resilient, and unstoppable, capable of sustaining change far beyond 6 months into a lifetime of continual growth. 6 months is not a lifetime. It is not even a fraction of one. But 6 months of radical responsibility, clear vision, daily discipline, strong health, skill development, and relentless accountability can set you on a path that changes everything. The future is not waiting for you. It is being shaped right now by every choice you make. You can leave here today and drift, letting the next half year slip away as just another chapter of wasted potential, or you can decide with conviction that 6 months from now, you will not be the same person. The decision is in your hands. The time is already moving. And the only question that matters is this: will you rise to meet the life you are capable of living, or will you let it pass you by? The choice is yours. Make it count.